So I know I'm a bit junior than all of you, but with much due respect, I welcome you all in this session. And today's rapporteur for the session is Shamurpita De. So let us introduce Shamurpita a bit. Shamurpita De is currently pursuing PhD in English from Tripura University. She had the opportunity to teach English as a guest lecturer in MBB College and BBM College, and also Tripura Institute of Technology. Just a bit diversion to this, whatever I said. On 15th March 2022, she has been selected as a probationary officer in State Bank of India. So we welcome Shamurpita, our today's rapporteur. Shamurpita, I think you are still not audible. So let me start. So first of all, let me tell you the names of the today's paper presenters. Ma'am Surekha Chakraborty, and her topic will be a fresh reading of Indra Nui's Memoir as a woman in corporate sector. Ma'am Jagriti Upadhyay, Dystopia, Woman and Technology in Catholicism and Eco-Feminist reading of Margaret, Atwood's Oryx and Craig. Ma'am Diksha Bhagat and Anupama Vora ma'am. Their paper will be Muslim Women and Technology, a change initiated by the era of technology in Muslim world. Ma'am Himanshi Chandravanshi and Ma'am Anupama Vora. And their paper will be Envisioning Freedom through Technological Advancement into Feminist Utopia Text. And last but not the least, Ma'am Bijetri Dotto Mojumdar, and her paper will be based on Driving Their Own Way, Reframing Femininity, Breaking the Stereotypes.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
Shamurpita.
Yes.
Is it audible now?
Yes, audible. Yeah, Shamurpita. Yes, it's audible now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank God.
So,
Finally.
yeah. Technology is not betraying at the last moment, so it's still having friendship with women. So so it's not betraying us. So all the papers are much interesting. So without much delay, let me invite Ma'am Surekha Chakraborty with her paper. Ma'am, please.
Good evening, everyone. Ma'am, I am Surekha Chakraborty.
Okay. Let me just rectify. She is Surekha Chakraborty, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, ma'am.
And thank you for the opportunity. So the title of my paper is A Fresh Reading of Indra Nui's Memoir as a Woman in the Corporate Sector. The passion and position of women in science and technology has been debated because of the long-established marginalization of women in the professions that are technically oriented. Technology was confined to masculinity, segregating the second sex. Developments in the fields of digitalization and biotechnologies have surmised the traditional link between technology and male privilege, leading it finally to get severed. The theories of information society or knowledge economy argue that the old hierarchies are falling into parts and are replaced by more flexible networks than former rigidity. Globalization has embraced every social domain by providing prominence to the intensity, extensity, and velocity of global flows, interactions, and networks, enabling to frame a new post-traditional network society. Women have always been epitomes of performing their duties, but they should help themselves to defend their fundamental rights, even though society has put them in a subordinate position. They must understand the fact that all the good chances and opportunities are not designed only for men as the agent of power. Karl Marx, in his theory of materialist determinism, has mentioned that the principle of materialism to happen in the family life, whereas Engels has stated a husband to be considered as a bourgeois and the wife to be the oppressed side. Industrialization has segregated the condition of women working at home, which never produces money, and in public sector, which helps in earning money. Angels provides a solution for the women that they can be free from getting oppressed in the family if they work in the public sector. Being monetary independent or material possessor, a woman might gain a better position in the society. In order to win the dominant patriarchal culture, women are expected to raise their voice and face the oppressor. It has been claimed by capitalist ideology that men are bourgeois while women are proletariat, as men work in public sector and earn money while women work in the domestic area and have no earnings. Women are thought to be weak due to lack of monetary power, and she would be dominated and thus lose her basic rights. So the socialist feminism suggests women to work in the public sector and earn money and power as well. Women would be independent and would gain self-confidence if they are economically independent. This paper aims at probing how, through her memoir, My Life in Full, Work, Family, and Our Future, Indra Nui has established her identity of a marginalized woman who is competing equally in the professional world of male dominance. In her memoir, she explores her life as a woman in the corporate and her struggles under the oppressive mechanism of a closed society. The protagonist on her writing has projected how she has fulfilled the desire of being a woman of prominence and for making her life an icon for the women who struggle to make their positions in this ever-growing techno world. She has been one of the most loved CEOs and the first woman trailblazer to hold the position of a CEO in a Fortune 50 company. She has won a lot of awards for her contributions in the business world and in the society. She has exemplified herself as a woman figure who is looked up by people irrespective of their age and gender as a beckoning hope of building their career in this progressive world of technology. Nui's memoir talks about her ability to connect some of the links between her life, her work, her family, and her career. She has mentioned in her book that it is not a memoir for her, rather a manual for the women who are emerging out of their cocoon of fidelity to the outer world to build their careers without neglecting their young children, older aging elderly parents, and at the same time trying to make a difference in the society and community. In her memoir, she has mentioned, to quote, "We need the wisdom of business leaders, policymakers, and all women and men passionate about easing the work and family burden to come together here with a can-do sense of optimism and a must-do sense of responsibility. We can transform our society. Transformation is difficult, but I have learned that with courage and persistence and the inevitable give and take, it can happen." Again, to quote, "In the months before I left PepsiCo in 2018, I thought about how I would contribute in the years ahead, knowing that I am one in the chain of women leaders who can help move us forward for generations to come. I set out to write a book and insisted to all around me that it would not be a memoir. Instead, I thought I would devote every ounce of my experience and intellect to a manual for fixing how we mix work and family," unquote. Nui has thought of bringing a change in the society by bringing positivity in two areas. One, she has noticed that women in managerial ranks came into the workforce in large numbers and dropped out in the second or third level as they just couldn't figure out how to make motherhood and rising in the corporate world possible together. The corporate world is a steep pyramid, and if anyone sought to take a detour or drops out, it's very hard to return back to the same position. Since women are wicked smart and talented, there is a need to figure out how to make more of them ascend to the top. They should be deployed in all of the productive jobs that would enable the economy to grow. The second most challenging task is to emotionally come in terms with them, and this difficult area has hardly been accounted so far. She has pointed out that the frontline and essential women workers in the pandemic had to move out of their homes in order to support their families, and it helped the economy as well. Similarly, if support system is provided to women in the managerial level, they can help them to move up the ladders of success. Thus, these issues cannot be termed as their problems. Rather, it has taken the shape of a collective challenge to address. If the challenges are put together, one can find that both the problems and the solutions are the same, but the biggest task is how to address it and move forward. In her memoir, she has clearly stated that women's choice to work outside their homes is directly related to their self-well-being as well as it adds to the prosperity of their families. Questions do arise from the so-called sophisticated society people regarding whether women could be designated as a paid worker at all. Moreover, this perspective seems much related to the idea that the children of the working mothers suffer a lot. Nui opposes this notion as she feels that the children of the working mothers tend to do better in school, their studies, they become more independent and self-dependent, and they visualize their mothers as role models. The more women would participate as paid labor force, the better it would be for the world economy. She believes that every working woman has to face many challenges in life, but if she gets a supporting family and an understanding spouse, she would be able to face the hurdles of her working life more boldly. She writes that she had never had a thought of quitting her job as it was an economic decision taken by her husband Raj and she. In her memoir, she writes to quote, "More women in the workforce makes us all more prosperous, cutting poverty, boosting wages, and swelling gross domestic product. But for me, the reason women need a clear path to paid work is more direct. We all deserve the power of the purse for our freedom. The full acceptance of women as paid workers spells human progress. It unlocks them from being at the mercy of a male-dominated world." Unquote. Nui's memoir is an arc of her life that informs a lot of the managerial issues that a woman faces in the corporate world. She has prioritized that in order to upbeat being a marginalized in the corporate world, a woman worker must open up her ideas, thoughts, feelings, must use her voice with proper and especially oral communication skills. She can mobilize her position if she acquires proper communication skills through trainings and by listening to the speeches of the great orators, which she prefers, when on Jordan and Bill Clinton, so that at every point of time of her speech, she is able to create vivid pictures in the minds of her audience and constantly let them to evolve so that her speech goes from the mind or head to the heart of the listener. Indra was the first woman in color in the Fortune 50 company. In her memoir, she has talked about her first summer job experience of interviewing at Yale. It was in 1978-79 when there weren't many international students in the universities of USA and there were no colored women coming from emerging markets to study there. In those days, there was hardly any infrastructure built to provide support to people like her who came with no idea and knowledge about how to dress, behave, or interact. She was in a situation either to sink or to swim. She had to learn by watching others and get better. She felt a lot awkward as she didn't have the right outfits for the interview and people didn't receive her as they received others. She had saris and a very few jeans and tops. She was confused regarding a dress code for the interview. So she went to Crescent's with her savings of $50 and spent it on her outfits for the interview day. Though the interview went very well, but she was feeling terrible inside because of her appearance. After her interview, she went to the director of the career development, Jane Morrison, and she burst into tears. For her next interview, Jane suggested her to wear a sari with a token of advice. Next time, wear the sari, and if they won't hire you for who you are, it's their loss. Just be yourself, unquote. Nui accorded with the advice of Jen. And ironically, she was offered with both the jobs of day one and the second day. She realized that she had come to a country where people were more interested in what one's potentiality to work rather than how one looked or acted. She was hired by Booz Allen for a summer job in Chicago with interns from Harvard, Stanford, Northwestern, and the University of Chicago. She joined a team developing strategy for an Indiana-based company that made food ingredients. A wonderful group of men who included her in all discussions and deliberations, coached her and fully supported her. To quote her words, "I wore a sari to work every day but never visited the client. At the time, I fully understood and accepted my colleagues, leaving me behind. It seemed a small price to pay. I was thrilled to be on my way as a working woman in America. Unquote. Nui has talked about her success in two ways. One is she had to do her part very clearly by putting all her efforts and intellect. In her memoir, she has mentioned that she always had the immigrant fear. She often went to her room and talked to herself regarding her being so different from others in the foreign land. As there was none like her, so she might be questioned of regarding her presence in various projects, meetings, her advices, and even of her table. In her interviews, she has mentioned that in order to gain a respectable position, she had to give her best. She had to prepare herself to give out the top of the material with her determination, knowledge, and depth of expertise. To quote, I was always aware that women in the corporate world were climbing a steeper, more slippery ladder than the men. Even when I was on the very top rung, I was still on the women's ladder. Unquote. She focused on the knowledge based, on competence, on thinking about an issue in details and at higher level. So when she came to the table with all those skills, people looked past at who was she, her background, her way of talking, her appearance, but at the end, they all looked forward for the great points that she used to make. Though she had many uncomfortable moments, but gradually she gained the position of getting invited to most of the meetings. Her presence, her points of views were sought after. She was the person who got support and encouragement from the male CEOs and the senior executives, as there were no women in the senior positions in those days. Thus, she earned her place in the patriarchal genre. Indra has talked about the challenges that she faced as a CEO and the way she tackled them. She was the CEO in PepsiCo for 12 years. When she took up the position of the CEO, she had financial crisis. USA was going through financial crisis. Though internationally the financial condition was growing, but PepsiCo was more an US company than international. So she had to figure out how to add her international portfolio very fast. She figured out to reset the relationship with American bottling partners who were behaving differently. There was a lot of talk about obesity and taxes in various categories, and everywhere she turned in, there was crisis, and everyone of the entire organization was looking at her to lead the company calmly with confidence and thoughtfulness. So she projected her exterior appearance to be calm and confident while she was dealing rigorously through every turbulence internally. She needed the cooperation of all her key executives, and for that, she makes use of her head, heart, and hands, and makes sense that they understood her agenda. During her journey from CFO, President CFO to CEO, she had to be on call of 75 quarters of earning releases, and she had done such a tough task. To quote, I was very proud of my work at PepsiCo. Total shareholder returns in the 12 years between December 2006 and to December 2018 totaled 149%, beating the Standard and Poor's 500 index, which was up 128%. The company returned more than $79 billion in cash to shareholders. Market capitalization rose by $57 billion in those 12 years. Net revenue jumped 80% to $64 billion in 2018. I knew we could have done even more or done it faster if the financial crisis hadn't tossed us around like the rest of the global economy, but we had handled that well too. I had worked as hard as I could, and I had truly loved the company with all my heart and soul. Unquote. In one of her interviews, she has mentioned that when she had entered PepsiCo in 1994, there was no women CEOs, but in the present time, almost 40 women CEOs are there, but it is less than 9% of the Fortune 500 CEOs. She believes that there is lots of room for the women who want to be the CEOs, entrepreneurs, run NGOs, and in other positions and platforms in the society. She has asserted that women can give their best in the corporate with the integration of their working life with their family life. Indra Nui is the first woman of the corporate who has clearly stated the role of a woman in her memoir, who has learned a lot in the midst of a demanding job and her family. She urges both business and government to prioritize the care ecosystem, paid leave, and work flexibility. At the same time, she puts forward her convincing argument for improving company and community support for young family builders. This would aid the economy to grow in full potential. Her memoir is an inspiration for the aspiring women who want to make their own position in the world with their intelligence and talents. I end my conversation with my paper with her words, with her concluding words in the memoir, that my conclusion is that our society can leap ahead on the work-family conundrum by focusing on three interconnected areas: paid leave, flexibility, and predictability and care. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am. A big round of applause for ma'am. Okay, ma'am. I know it's very odd to tell the presenters to wind up because they have lot to say, and discussion means discussion. We cannot make it short and like that, but what to do as we are running short of time. So that's why we have to interfere. Our chairperson, Madam Sandhya Bhardwaj, is already here. So let us welcome ma'am. Hello, ma'am. I think due to some technical issues, previous link didn't work and you couldn't join.
Yes,
And
yes,
yes, ma'am. Ma'am, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I could just partly hear your presentation, Surekha, and very good evening and good morning to everyone. So this time I'll just let Bharnita continue with the next participant, and then I'll take. Thank you so much.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. So let us now welcome Ma'am Jagriti Upadhyay, whose topic is Dystopia, Women and Technology in the Catholusin and Eco-Feminist reading of Margaret Atwood's Oryx and Prey. Ma'am, please.
Can you hear me?
Ma'am, yes, ma'am.
Yes, Jagriti, we can hear you.
So I'm Dr. Jagriti Upadhyay. First of all, warm greetings to everyone, particularly the members of the WCWS and Holy Cross College, Agartala. Today's theme being Women in Technology. My topic is Dystopia, Women and Technology in the Thulucene, an eco-feminist reading of Margaret Atwood's Oryx and Crake. I'll begin with what she quotes on page 209, and it's like the jumbled rhyme. Like little sport guider who made the life experiments like a rakunk at play. We'll come to the terms later on. I think, therefore I spam. The proper study of mankind is everything. I unquote. While the term post-human resists any concrete definition, Donna Haraway, the multi-species feminist theorist, in her essay, A Manifesto for Cyborgs in Feminist Literary Theory and Criticism, a Norton reader, splices humanities and science to clarify how technology has changed the nature of nature itself, altering human nature, non-human nature, and the permeable borders between these two fundamental categories of being. She argues, I quote, technological determinism is the only one ideological space opened up by the reconceptions of machine and organism as coded text through which we engage in the play of writing and reading the world, I unquote. Gary Wolf's What is the Posthuman underscores the concept of the posthuman as that which decentralizes human beings from the hitherto grand narratives and replaces them with the other non-human, techno-human possibilities such as nature, animals, humanoids, cyborgs, etc., interrogating the different hegemonic signifiers in circulation. So in the midst of spiraling ecological devastation, Haraway offers provocative new ways to reconfigure our relations to the earth and all its inhabitants. And she eschews referring to our current epoch as the Anthropocene, preferring to conceptualize it as what she calls the Thulucene, as it more aptly and fully describes our epoch as one in which the human and non-human are inextricably linked in tentacular practices. The Thulucene, Haraway explains, requires symbiosis or making with rather than autopoiesis or self-making. Learning to stay with the trouble of living and dying together on a damaged earth will prove more conducive to the kind of rethinking that would provide the means to building more livable futures. Now, my paper would be an attempt to explore how technology places women's bodies in Margaret Atwood's Oryx and Crake, part of her Mad Adam dystopic trilogy. A large part of Oryx and Crake is centered on mankind's dependency on technology, the tropes of Michel Foucault's concept of biopower through powerful corporations and genetic engineering. Using dark satiric tones, Atwood uses this novel to interrogate women and reproduction, and whether our race is moving closer to extinction with our obsession with moving forward in a post-apocalyptic world. With a twist of irony, the character Craig, who is Glenn in his real name, but who chooses to splice the genes and make crackers, he chooses to manipulate human beings to create bioengineered post-humans called the crackers. My question posits on how, in the wake of the post-human, does one make sense of the world dominated by capitalism and perforated by gene splicing through technology? I would examine the emerging degenerative space inherited by a heavily ravished and depleted earth in the Anthropocene. You call it the Capitalocene, you call it the Plantationocene, which is very much in vogue nowadays, particularly with Black writing, or you call it the Thulucene, tracing the likelihood of the creation of a more than human existence, a utopian / dystopian occurrence in an envisaged speculative future, as also sporadic references to how Atwood makes plausible the use of memory to negotiate and navigate spatiotemporal boundaries blurred by technology, and the sweeping changes that it has brought about by an ever-expanding possibility of the post-human through a discourse of ruptures and continuities. Ecofeminism emerged as a powerful response to the anthropocentric culture/nature dualism upheld by the 18th century enlightened humanism, which in its effort to uphold the humanist rationalist ideal essentialized, we all know the feminine in Elaine Showalter's concept, where we are supposed to fit in certain roles. So essentialism upholds that, and inferiorized women, like Simone Beauvoir says, one is not born, but rather one becomes a woman, the other as compared to the male. So they inferiorize women by attempting to devalue the feminine realms of domesticity and reproduction. And the term ecofeminism was first coined by the French feminist François Daubon in 1974 to describe the large-scale violation inflicted on women and nature as a result of male domination. Drawing attention to the current ecological crises compounded by overpopulation, overconsumption, and pollution, and now, of course, we have the pandemics, alongside the age-old patriarchal oppression of women, Aubin called on feminists to wed their causes to that of the environment and led the way into a post-patriarchal, genuinely humanist and ecologically sustainable future. We now use the term womanist for that. From Alice Walker's, I'm quoting from Alice Walker's In Search of Our Mother's Gardens. And Patrick Murphy, while commenting on the dialectical relationship between ecology and feminism, states, to be a feminist, one must also be an ecologist, because the domination and oppression of women and nature are inextricably twined. And unquote, I'm skipping some portion of this slide. Then, of course, you have Maria Mais and the Indian activist Vandana Shiva, both eminent eco-feminists, who condemn the master-slave relationship that operates in men's behavior towards women and nature. And in the capitalist patriarchal model, what we talk of as the capital OC, the male tendency of treating nature as a commodity to be used and harnessed is extended to their treatment of women's body as a sexual commodity. I also will refer to Stacey Almio, who proposes the new critical concept of transcorporeality, the movement across bodies and the interchanges and interconnections between various bodily nature, as well as the invisible flows between human corporeality and the non-human world. Now, Atwood's Oryx and Crake, published in 2003, is a vision of scientific dystopia, a vision of near future world, it's speculative fiction as she names it, as a bleak and terrifying place, a veritable wasteland, I quote from T.S. Eliot, that has been created in the wake of ecological and scientific disaster. The novel underscores how technological and industrial disasters first affect women, especially technology, you have gene splicing, you have creation of synthetic food, you have human relationships, you have sex, you have cybernetics, you have pornography. So my focus will be only on the technology in women, how it is portrayed in Oryx and Crake. So this novel vacillates between utopia and dystopia, and this helps create a new scientific society which transforms the natural world into an unruly dystopic organism, and Atwood calls it ustopia. The novel begins in the future with supposedly the last surviving human. His name is now Snowman, earlier it is Jimmy, and moves in flashback. So memory and trauma also are very much a part and parcel of Oryx and Crake. And the novel depicts a post-apocalyptic wasteland robbed of its natural resources. The first chapter of the novel begins with Snowman waking up to a landscape contaminated by industrial waste. I quote, "On the eastern horizon, there is a grayish haze, lit now with a rosy, deadly glow. The distant ocean grinding against the Asas reef of rusted car parts and jumbled bricks and assorted rubble sounds, almost like holiday traffic," I unquote. Before the pandemic, Jimmy lived a secluded life in lavish technocratic compounds, and his father worked as a genetic scientist or a genographer, as Atwood calls him, at organ ink farms, splicing genes to create different species. Jimmy's father proudly welcomes the discovery of human neocortex on pigs. He considers it as a benchmark in the world of biotechnology. For him, gene splicing is the new definition of global development, and he believes that scientific discoveries motivate humanity towards a better livelihood, and he calls them pigoons, officially Seuss multi-organifier. Now, the hubristic and hedonistic scientists toying with innocent animals for monetary profit at Organ Inc. artificially produce spliced organisms. So you have pigs with a human neocortex, pigoons. You have splice of raccoon and skunk as raccoons, which is Jimmy's pet. You have volgogs, splices of wolves and dogs. You have snats, which are splices of snakes and rats, etc. Now, here is how the eco-feminist aspect and the feminist aspect comes in. So Jimmy's mother, a retired microbiologist, Sharon, is skeptical of the compound life and its techno-scientific activities. And she's sensitive towards the damage that such activities cause to the environment. So I'll skip the other part of the slide. Sharon thinks that gene splicing is all artificial. She opposes Jimmy's father's neuroregeneration project, and she quotes, I quote, "More people with the brain of pigs to be used for ripping off a bunch of desperate people," unquote. She berates, I quote, "You and your smart partners, your colleagues, it's wrong. The whole organization is wrong. It's a moral cesspool, and you know it," I unquote. She interrogates this incessant research. What are you doing? This pig brain thing. You are interfering with the building blocks of life. It's immoral. It's sacrilegious. Jimmy's father thinks they are just proteins, There's nothing sacred about cells and tissues. And for Jimmy, it is evil dad versus righteous mom. So evil dad blustered and theorized and dished out pompous bullshit. Righteous mom complained and accused. In righteous mom's cosmology, evil dad was the sole source of hemorrhoids, kleptomania, global conflict, bad breath, tectonic plate fault lines, and clogged drains, as well as every migraine headache and menstrual cramp, I quote. Sharon hammers away Jimmy's father's computer and leaves the compound. And she keeps writing to Jimmy. So memory and trauma is also an important theme in Oryx and Craig. And Jimmy recalls snatches about his mother's concern about climate change, her beach house, and some other such houses being washed away in the eastern coastal cities with the rising of the sea and the huge tidal waves from the Canary Island volcano. And then he further states, I quote, and she used to snivel about her grandfather's Florida grapefruit orchard that had dried up like a giant raisin when the rains had stopped coming. The same year, Lake Okeechobee had shrunk to a reeking mud puddle and the Everglades had burned for 3 weeks straight, I unquote. We have already witnessed the fires in California and Australia last year, year before last, and this year as well. So Sharon's revulsion to this ideological praxis is apparent in her reiterative criticism against the genie scientist at Oregon Inc. And she leaves. Her exasperation threatens her motherly responsibilities and she neglects her duties to Jimmy and then she leaves. So Sharon's perturbation with this techno-patriarchal determinism could be substantiated with Lawrence Buell's definition of ecofeminism. Buell quotes ecological feminism as an umbrella term for a range of theoretical and practical positions that share the view that the twin denominations of women and nature are artifacts of patriarchal culture, instituted in antiquity and intensified by the epistemological dualism and rational instrumentalism of scientific and technological revolutions. And then I have quoted from Germaine Greer and how she quotes on how Eric Otto also quotes on science fiction and ecological conscience, but I'm skipping the slide. In this post-apocalyptic dystopia, where Snowman, who is Jimmy in the pre-pandemic world, is the last human on Earth, he is surrounded by and has the responsibility and as caretaker of the new species which Craig has created as Craigers. So they are genetically engineered by Craig. Before creating the Craigers, Craig annihilates the human race through an apocalyptic bioengineered virus that he delivers to the human population through the Bliss Plus pill. This virus is briefly named Jet Speed Ultravirus Extraordinary. Before the pandemic that ensues, after the pill has been ingested, resulting in the deaths of every human being except Snowman. So Craig's scheme to switch present human beings with a new biogenetic species is analogous to the planned extinction of human beings. And how does he do it? The Bliss Plus pills offers unlimited supply of libido and sexual prowess, and heightened sexual pleasure induces sterility in its consumers. So Craig finds war as the outcome of misplaced sexual energy, so sexual energy has to be contained. Then he demonstrates the same anthropocentric pride like Jimmy's father, and he dreams of eradicating the hypersexual propensities among humans. He designs the Craigers in such a way that eliminates senses that lead to rationality. So they don't have rationality, they don't have emotions, warfare, greed, communism, etc., which he finds as a disgrace to humanity. And he wants to substitute Homo sapiens with the Craigers. And then he believes that annihilating the human species could be the key to saving Earth. So this is his utopian viewpoint. And he, through this, dreams to resolve the issues of overpopulation, poverty, unregulated reproduction, inhuman crimes, and other forms of destructive activities. So here are the characteristics of the Craigers. They are green in color and they purr like kittens to heal their wounds, etc., etc. Now, this is where reproduction and the feminist aspect comes in. So mating is done only when a female is in heat, once every 3 years, and is void of emotional attachments. So how is mating done? There are 4 men and the woman in heat. Her condition is obvious to all from the bright blue color of her buttocks and abdomen, a trick of variable pigmentation filched from the baboons, with a contribution from the expandable chromosophores of the octopus. And then, of course, he says there is no now need for inheritance and all the other fights, no need for lust. So sex is no longer a mysterious right here. And this is how it has been pictured, the blue women. And then, of course, the males, they also have, like what you call, they have a dick dance number. They wave their genitals to and fro in unison, and their penises also turn blue. So this is Craig's view of, the Quakers, that he says that there will be no more prostitution, no sexual abuse of children, no haggling over the price, no pimps, no sex slaves, no more rape. The other feminist story is that of Oryx. Now, she is not actually, she's been made out as a figure from a series of the pictures that Jimmy and Craig watch on the porn sites. So she is an oriental figure of the post-colonial world.
Excuse me, Jagriti, 1 second. I think
Yes.
you should wind up now, please. Thank you, because we are already running late.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
She has been sold into prostitution by her mother because of massive climate changes in South Asia. And then she sells flowers, and then she's made to work on the pornographic sites. And she says whether she would become a melon bum girl like her brother, who is into who is raped by gay men. And then I'll just skip, and then she's used this sold by a mother. Rewrite her. Atwood makes her rewrite the past as not a story of lost innocence and colonial victimization alone. Oryx has learned to use the commoditized and prevalent value system to her advantage, because she tells Jimmy that everything has a price to it. And the novel records Jimmy's perpetual attempt to locate Oryx's colonial and sexual subordination. He tries to empathize with her sufferings, but he is not able to, because even Craig is in love with her. So Jimmy refers to her as the ecological child, as she is imparting knowledge of her words to Craig's children. He calls her the children of Craig and Oryx. And then, of course, Madeline Davies calls Margaret Atwood's female body, that how, Atwood female character show marked signs of bodily unease. Their bodies are battlefields where anxieties relating to wider power structures are written onto female flesh. And sexuality, too, is a commodity to be bought and sold. Prostitution and pornography are as integral as nudie news. So through a similar patriarchal and hierarchical paradigm in the beginning of the novel, the concurrent exploitation of women and children and the poor, as well as the environment and other companion species, are highlighted in a technological driven society. And then, of course, the sites that they watch is given here. So life has become a corporate commodity, and animals are treated as organ farms for human transplants. And the whole story is goes on. So I would conclude Oryx and Craig are engaged in a symbolic struggle between science and arts, with Craig representing science and technology and picked up by the headhunters, while Jimmy represents humanities at Martha Graham. And Snowman in the present transforms Craig's irony on himself by making him a god, worshipped by the children of the Craig. He refers to himself as the god of bullshit, and he creates bizarre origin stories that the Quakers enthusiastically believe. So then, in the end, he embarks on a quest in pursuit of answers with the aid of the green-eyed children of Craig through the rugged forest that was so recently a great community before large companies put mankind on an unregulated genetic manipulation adventure. And these are the works that I have cited. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jagriti. As always, it was a beautiful experience listening to you. You really work hard on your presentations, and I am so happy that I could hear you again.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Sandhya, ma'am.
Yes, paucity of time. I'm sorry we couldn't go into the details. And I would
Yes,
also
ma'am.
request, thank you so much. I would also request the other participants to kindly adhere to the time limit. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Marilita, you want to invite Deeksha?
Yes, yes, ma'am. Yes. Okay. Our next presenter is Ma'am Diksha Bhagat and Ma'am Anupama Bora. It's a joint paper presentation on Muslim women and technology, a change initiated by the era of technology in Muslim world. So, may I request Ma'am Diksha Bhagat and Ma'am Anupama Bora to present their paper.
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. Am I
Good evening.
audible?
Yes, yes, you are audible. Yes.
And if my PPT is
Yeah, to me it's visible. I hope to others also
Yes,
it's same.
it's
Yeah,
visible.
Yes, it is
yeah,
visible.
yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I shall start now. So, the title of my paper is Muslim Women and Technology, a change initiated by the era of technology in Muslim world. First of all, I'll begin with the definition of technology. The term technology is a miscellaneous term, the reason due to which intellectuals find it difficult to constrain it into a specific and apt definition. Therefore, different philosophers from time to time have tried to define the term based on their different experiences and understandings. The term technology is dynamic and undergoes a change in trends with time, which makes it all the more abstract and difficult to interpret. Quote, the term technology is inherently abstract concept which is difficult to interpret, observe, and evaluate. Unquote. The past researchers have also tried to define the complex term in context to different perspectives, situations, and elements. As S. Kumar described technology being comprised of two main components, a physical component which comprises of items such as products, tooling, equipments, blueprints, techniques, and processes, and the informational component which consists of know-how in management, marketing, production, quality control, reliability, skilled labor, and functional areas. Also, the term technology is associated with the way through which solutions can be sought out to various occurring problems. Quote, technology is always connected with obtaining certain results, resolving certain problems, completing certain tasks, using particular skills, employing knowledge, and exploiting assets. Unquote. And then the relationship between gender and technology. It is always complicated and neglected as women were always associated with emotions rather than logic, which in turn paved a way to dominance of men over the technological spheres, leading women to background. Quote, despite exploring the physical and the political, cultural, and even cosmological dimensions of technical projects, technology studies long remained gender blind, focusing on modern industrial and military technologies and reflecting the social realities of engineering and business worlds in foregrounding man, the machine maker. Unquote. However, with the advent of the time, the world technology came out as the most empowered sphere. Therefore, feminists realized the need that in order to make women self sufficient and prosper, they need to advance in the field of technology, which was generally referred as a field of men. Quote, in the 1970s, radical feminists and eco-feminists initiated a critique of the inherently patriarchal nature of technology and of technoscience. Unquote. Thus, gradually, the doors of technology started opening for women too. And in the contemporary era, women are an inevitable part of the sphere of technology. And now I'll come to my work, the specific work on which I am working on, and it is Shirin Maksud's a memoir, Reflections of a Pakistani Woman. Shireen Maqsood is a Pakistani-based writer, diarist, and artist. Was born on August 24, 1949. She has written her memoir, Reflections of a Pakistani Woman, which was published in 2016. This memoir confronts directly with the struggles and dilemmas encountered by Muslim women, especially in the era of science and technology. Through her memoir, she depicts the dilemma of each and every Pakistani woman who, though is admitted to school and is enabled to educate herself, however, is unable to succeed in life and become even financially independent. Double standards of a Pakistani society, which is patriarchal, can be exposed from the fact that women are not allowed to take up women are only allowed to take up basic education, and they are severely restricted culturally and religiously not to take up any profession, as the career perspective is not suitable for women, and that they should follow the gender roles as prescribed by the society, and therefore should be ready to get married and raise a family, as it is the only important purpose that women they serve in a patriarchal Muslim society. Quote, low literacy of female in Pakistan is due to many constraints such as socio-economic and religious issues. Females are expected to leave the family one day by getting married. Therefore, educating girls are considered a financial loss by the parents. Therefore, parents are more likely to educate their sons only. But unfortunately, female literacy rate is very low in Pakistan. Unquote. Therefore, conforming to the societal norms, Shireen Maqsood too received only basic education, and after she had just completed the first year of her bachelor's degree, she was married to her cousin Raja at the age of 18. After a year, she gave birth to a child and thus entered the stage of motherhood, which is the only role reserved for women by the patriarchal society. Quote, the proposal came when I was 17 and we were swiftly engaged. Then, a year later, after I completed my first year in Kinnair College, I was married to Raja. Just under a year later, I had a gorgeous son, Gautam, and 2 years after that, another wonderful boy, Kuram. Unquote. Shireen Maqsood left her education and career so as to get married, which forced her to the darkness of dependency and domestic labor. The unpaid labor which women are daily subjected to has become a common reason for the destitute and degrading of their financial position. Quote, motherhood and domestic labor are regarded as imminence, that is, as non-creative and non-productive, as not being projects, and thus as not creating value. Unquote. Thus, Shireen Maqsood too felt the tragedy of being locked up in the institution of marriage, where her hands they were restricted to opt for a job and has to depend solely on her husband for her living, which makes her position all the more victimized. Quote, Raja's career was in high gear. His prospects kept improving, unquote, while she has nothing in her hands to be proud of. Shireen Maqsood, to her memoir, openly exposes the downtrodden condition of women in Pakistani society, where they are deprived of the right to education, and thus getting education is not basic necessity but a privilege for women. Quote, I feel very different compared to other Pakistani women of my age. This difference may be traced to my father. I am Hamidi, a Muslim who enrolled both my sisters and me into the best possible educational institutions that were available to him throughout his migratory life across Pakistan. We were admitted to the best convent schools and colleges. Unquote. Thus, Pakistani women lag much behind other women of the world due to being illiterate and thus financially dependent, which puts them in the backseat in decision-making process. Quote, the educational backwardness of Pakistani people is most noticeable in respect of women education. In Pakistan, people did not give importance about women education. In fact, female is considered as a burden on their father and brothers. That's why they did not educate their daughters or sisters, unquote. Further, as a Pakistani society which is clearly conservative and is dominated majorly by Taliban, an Islamist armed student group which control the state as well as religious matters of Pakistani society, that states that women should not be given the power and place in public as it has made them more empowered, that they have been freed enough to demand divorce as a right, quote, the women have been given so-called freedom and liberty which causes danger to themselves, unquote. Therefore, in a country where women are mostly restricted from getting education and to join some profession, it becomes impossible for them to get updated with modern day technology and use it as a tool for their upliftment. Shirin Maksud remembered that she often felt downtrodden and degraded in her life as she received constant threats and rebuke from her husband solely because she was not financially independent and that she had to completely depend on her father for her living. Therefore, it becomes a primary duty to attend the needs of her food provider. But the tragedy was that she did not know the art of cooking. As cooking is deeply attached to the traits of being woman by patriarchy, it becomes all the more difficult for her to save her marriage. Quote, my absolute disinterest in cooking is my husband's biggest complaint against me. He has not forgiven me for this. This has resulted in a big stigma on my personality. Now, luckily in Pakistan, where Bangladeshi cooks are available in abundance, I'm relieved from the task of slaving over the stove. Unquote. Due to her inability to cook for her family, she was often threatened with divorce, which is a stigma in patriarchal society. Quote, these and so many other questions come to my mind when I think of divorce, that I'm so frightened by the consequences and would prefer to stay in a state of matrimony, whether it's or working out or not, unquote. One possible way through which Shireen Maksud felt emancipated being a woman, and that to Muslim women, was her ability to use technology of automobile for the upliftment of her personality and confidence. She direly wanted to have the freedom of driving a vehicle on her own. She was able to take driving lessons only when she moved to Bahrain with her husband. Driving builds up courage in women and develops a spirit of confidence and also improves their spirit of participation, especially in decision making process.
Excuse
Shireen
me, Diksha. I think you
yes,
should wind up now, please. Thank you.
ma'am, there are only 2 slides. Can I complete it?
I'll just wind it up soon. Okay.
Sure,
Skip
ma'am.
something and then wind it up
Sure,
because
sure.
we are already running late.
Sure, ma'am. Shireen Maksud wished to learn driving while she was living in Pakistan, but she did not get the opportunity as it was rare for women to be allowed to drive in Pakistan. However, as Bahrain allowed women to drive and have their own driving license, Shireen Maksud took the opportunity and learned driving, which helped her to become independent and feel worthy of herself. It was later when she passed her driving test, she came to know that Bahrain had one of the world's most difficult driving tests, and most of the people, even men, remain without a license throughout their life because of the hard test. Therefore, a spirit of self-acknowledgement and worthiness developed in her as she was able to pass the test even in her first attempt. As she describes in her words, I had no idea that the tests were considered so tough to pass over there. After my 10 lessons, a police inspector sat with me, and off I went. Very confidently, I drove into those cobwebs of tiny lanes. By God, I did it. And when I turned back, I saw the most unusual sight, a sea of white robes coming towards me, shouting, Mubarak, Mubarak. Bahrainis in their white kaftans were congratulating me with their hands high up in the air, cheering. Mubarak, what a deal, I asked Abdul. Is it not easy to pass a driving test here? Abdul said, men you see have been coming here for the past 3 or 4 years to pass their test. to 4 years, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How did I do it? I kept asking myself. And then another perspective where technology helped her in developing her personality and her individuality is through the mode of writing her memoir. She was able to use
Diksha, last 1 minute, please. Wind
Sure,
up.
ma'am. She was able to use the take the help of technology to present her perspective, which is important for a woman. That women should be able to give up mm, give her way of thinking to others, and through the help of her member, she was able to. Give a voice to her ideas, her perspective, which is important and which helped her in forming her confidence and individuality, which she was feeling lack of throughout her life, as she was unable to do anything of herself, and she has to depend solely on her family, especially on her husband, because of which he was threatening her for divorce and other things. Therefore, technology, though it is restricted for Muslim women, but still, in most of these two ways, Shireen Maksud used technology to form her identity, and therefore, Muslim women, they should come forward and use it as a tool for the upliftment and to give voice to their expressions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Diksha. Sorry, we are very short of time, and I would now request Baranita to invite Himanshi, and
Yes.
again I would also request Himanshi to just take up 7 minutes or so.
Yes. We are running really short of time. Um, may I now request Himanshi Chandravanshi, and that is also a joint paper with Ma'am Anupama Bora, and their topic is envisioning freedom through technological advancement in two feminist utopia text. Please, you can proceed.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, ma'am, is my PPT visible?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, good evening, everyone. The title of my paper is Envisioning Freedom Through Technological Advancement into Feminist Utopia Text. I am Himanshi Chandravanshi, PhD scholar from the Department of English. This is a joint paper with Professor Anupma Vohra. The paper is based on the premise that science and technology plays a fundamental role in an individual's professional and personal liberation, and consequently contributes to a community's overall development and becomes a way of holding and asserting power. However, patriarchy has constructed binaries wherein women are associated with emotion and men with reason, as a result of which men have monopolized the domain of science and technology with the support of arbitrary arguments such as, I quote, women are simply not as biologically suited for science as are men, unquote. The paper upholds the argument put forth by Eric Leif Devin in the book Partners in Wonder, Women and the Birth of Science Fiction, which exposes patriarchal societies' falsified outlook on women as less rational and logical as compared to men, therefore less capable of understanding science and technology. I quote, the pervasive sexism of a patriarchal society which divided men and women into gendered spheres of proper and appropriate activity certainly denied or discouraged female exposure to and knowledge of the pertinent domains which were seen as inappropriate for them. Nevertheless, women writers, by writing science fictions, feminist utopias, etc., resist this discourse and call for women's increased participation in the domain of science and technology. Annie Denton Cridge's Man's Rights and Ruqayya Shekhawat Hussein's Sultana's Dream are written in the same vein. Based on the preceding arguments, the paper highlights how women writers see scientific education and technological advancement as means towards liberation by analyzing these two texts. Annie Denton Cridge in Man's Rights constructs a utopic society in a series of dreams where men are confined to home and are caught up in the drudgery of household chores and look forward to the technological advancement for their liberation. Similarly, Ruqayya Shekhawat Hussain in Sultana's Dream projects a utopic society, Ladyland in a Dream, where women are actively engaged in the pursuit of education, science and technology and are no longer required to perform the tedious household chores, signaling their liberation and personal freedom, and men are confined to home. Interestingly, both Annie Danton Cridge and Rokeya Shekhawat Hussain look forward to self development, empowerment, and freedom through the lens of mastery over technology. The discussion in the paper unfolds in the following four sections, which is followed by a conclusion. So, inversion of traditional gender roles as delineated in man's rights. In man's rights, the respective duties of men and women are reversed, and all the housework is directed and done by the gentlemen housekeepers. In addition, they are entrusted with the additional responsibility of child caring. I quote, "Very soon I heard the sharp cry of the baby, and away ran the poor father, soon returning with baby in his arms, carrying it around with him while he raked the fire, fried the meat, and set the table for breakfast." Unquote. Men are overburdened with work. I quote, "Attending the children, sewing, go nervously into the kitchen and sadly and wearily attend to things there, looking pale and nervous, always grapple with a feeling of anxiety and unrest." Unquote. In contrast to men are women who remain indifferent to the deplorable situation of the husbands. I quote, "Quietly and composedly, she drank her coffee and read the morning paper, apparently oblivious of the trials of her poor husband." Unquote. Now, inversion of traditional gender roles as delineated in Sultana's Dream. Ruqayya Shekhawat Hussain in Sultana's Dream describes Ladyland in a dream vision where men are shy and timid, attributes which are traditionally associated with women. Further, they are confined to homes, I quote, "in their proper places, shut indoors," unquote, and women have the freedom to roam in the public space as they are not afraid of coming across a man. By inverting the gender roles, Ruqayya Shekhawat Hussain mocks at the dichotomous construction in patriarchal societies which promote private-public binary, confining women to private space and giving men access to the public space. Now, liberation through technological and scientific advancement as envisioned in man's rights. In man's rights, men realize that the whole system of housekeeping is wasteful and extravagant and a bad one and wears out their bodies and souls. They argue to extend the use of machinery. I quote, "Cannot all the domestic work be done by machinery? Instead of 14 little extravagant cooking stoves, let us have one large stove and do our cooking, washing, and ironing on a large scale." Unquote, substantiating what Deborah G. Johnson and Jameson M. Wetmore argue in the book Technology and Science, Building Our Socio-Ethical Future. I quote, "New technologies are often equated with progress itself in large part because they can help us to do things that were not previously possible and solve problems that have plagued humanity for centuries." Unquote. As men turn to technology, they are described as the emancipated class, investing their time and effort in intellectual pursuits. I quote, "Cultivation of their own minds, the dream of the poet and of the seer was realized." Unquote. As is also argued by Deborah G. Johnson and Jameson M. Wetmore, I quote, "Technological change and social change are understood to be intimately linked so that they create the future together." Unquote. Now, liberation through technological and scientific advancement as envisioned in Sultana's Dream. In Ladyland, guided by the queen, who liked science very much, women invested in scientific research while men were busy in increasing their military power. They belittle women's efforts, terming them as sentimental nightmares, perpetuating the stereotype that science and technology is the prerogative of men, as is aptly highlighted by Deborah G. Johnson and Jameson M. Wetmore in the book Technology and Society. I quote, "Culture has in the past seen and continues in the present to see science as male and therefore an inappropriate area of interest and activity for women." Unquote. The same scientific research, however, helps women acquire power in the Ladyland following a warfare after the men have been defeated. The men in Ladyland, wearied, wounded, and tired, retire into zenanas and remain confined within the four walls of the home. Interestingly, Ruqayya Shekhawat Hussain posits it is only when women progressed scientifically that they could acquire the public space and restrict men to the private space, inverting the age old private public dichotomy constructed and perpetuated by patriarchy. Conclusion. Scientific and technological advancement plays a pivotal role in leading towards liberation. It not only frees one from the drudgery of household chores, but also provides with knowledge which is empowering. As the denial of scientific and technical education keeps one stationed in their place, access to scientific and technical education can do wonders by eliminating ignorance and providing means for liberation, as illustrated in Man's Rights and Sultana's Dream. In Annie Denton Critt's Man's Rights, men look forward to scientific and technical advancement to overcome oppression, and as soon as they acquire scientific and technological knowledge, they take the first step forward towards their freedom. In Sultana's Dream, the oppression underlying women's situation has been overcome with the help of science and technology, and women have gained power in the other spheres of life as well. Both Annie Denton Cridge and Ruqayya Shekhawat Hussain, therefore, laud scientific and technical advancement and voice out a clear statement in favor of scientific and technical advancement to lead towards liberation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Himanshi. Very nice paper, and thank you for winding up in time. I know freedom through technological advancement is good for both men and women, and both should be given that space to grow. Now, Baranita, I think the last participant.
Yes. May I now request Bijetri Dr. Mojumdar, whose topic is driving their own way, reframing femininity, breaking the stereotypes. So, are you here? Yes.
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Is my screen visible, ma'am?
No. We can't see. Yeah, trying. It's coming, but have not yet come. It has not yet come. Yeah. Now it's visible.
It's visible now. Okay. So good evening, everyone. The topic for my presentation is driving their own way, reframing femininity, breaking the stereotypes. My presentation focuses on how women drivers challenge the stereotypes surrounding driving and reframe the notions of femininity and driving. Now, moving on to the next slide. The use and consumption of car is influenced by the social structure, economic, cultural, and ethical values and practices of the society. I will situate the car in the gender structure to study and examine how the imagination surrounding the car is shaped by established gender order of the society. First, I'd look at how the use of the cars which were provided to the Aboriginal communities at Nauru in Australia by the federal government is influenced by the gender norms of the Aboriginal community. The study was done by Gertrude Stotz in her essay, The Colonizing Vehicle. Stotz observed that the use of space inside the car was influenced by the kinship and gender norms. For example, a mother-in-law was not supposed to sit right behind her son-in-law in order to avoid him seeing her reflection in the rear-view mirror, which, according to the local belief system, may turn him blind for transgressing the boundaries. The car was considered to be a man's thing, and women were not allowed to drive, and neither they allowed any women to question that. Stotz had to refrain herself from questioning them any further. On careful probing, she found that men considered women to be unfit for driving, and they also said that women have no license. And women too had similar thoughts, except for a few women who expressed their disagreement, saying that government should look at them too, and they can also learn. Now, coming to America, in 1910, women's involvement with the car had caused severe social anxiety. At first, the women were presumed to be inefficient drivers. As we see, the advertisements targeting women were assuring that they could drive. The focus of the advertisements were the safety and smoothness of the cars, which would make it easy for the women to drive. Also, another concern of these advertisements were the preservation of femininity of the women, which the society had feared that they would be lost on indulging with the car. This led the advertisers to project driving as an extension of the domestic duties. masculinity surrounding driving, as it declared that women were equally competent in driving as the men were, and even better in their response to traffic situations as compared to men. I chose to look at these two communities widely separated from each other to underline that the consumption of products in every society reflect the norms of the society, and so does the use of car, which is considered to be a masculine object meant primarily for men in patriarchal societies. Now moving on to the next slide. I would briefly examine the car culture in India. The Transport Yearbook of 2015-16 recorded that there are only 11% female drivers in India. Only 6.8% of the licenses were issued to women out of the total 206 million driving licenses issued in 2019 as per the data available on statista.com. The number of women car buyers have slightly risen from 7% to 12% since 2015, as reported by Maruti Suzuki, and 3% to 12% since 2015, as reported by Hyundai Motors. Though it shows a rising trend, the stark gender gap is very much visible. The data calls for special attention as there is no ban on women's driving in India. So there is a need to examine what stops women from accessing the car and driving. Now let's take a look at women's association with cars and driving. How women's association with cars and driving have been presented in Indian films. For the purpose, I have selected 3 films. And here 1975 film directed by Gulzar showed the protagonist Aarti Devi, a powerful politician estranged from her husband, driving her own car. The film focuses on her personal life as well as her political career, and in both spheres she is unconventional, uncompromising and assertive. 3 Idiots, a 2009 film directed by Rajkumar Hirani, shows the female protagonist Priya, doctor, to own and ride a scooty. She is the love interest of protagonist Rancho, an excellent engineering student with unconventional ideas who fancies her as a bride, coming to marry him on her scooty in bride's attire. And she does the same at the end of the film. Now, this is the only bridal entry of this kind in Indian films so far. Mission Mangal, a more recent film released in 2019, directed by Jagan Shakti, shows the character of Tara Shinde, a scientist at ISRO, which is again a highly male-dominated profession in India and around the world, driving her car quite smoothly. But her colleague, Kritika Agrawal, is having a hard time trying to learn driving and causing small accidents on the roads. So as we see here, cars and driving as shown in these films is a luxury and convenience enjoyed by the privileged upper class and upper middle class women who are well educated, empowered, emancipated and are ready to challenge conventions and establishment. So car and driving has been connected to class, unconventionality, liberty and emancipation in the context of women's ownership of car. I would like to point out here that no film or advertisement in India have ever represented a women commercial driver, though they are present on the roads for more than a decade now, though they are rare and few in numbers. Now moving on to the next slide. Okay, let's take a look at how safe women are in the streets and public spaces in the Indian city. During the public perception survey for preparing the Delhi Human Development Report, out of 13,000 people surveyed, only 19% felt Delhi to be a safe country for women. 90% women feel unsafe in public transport. According to the research done by Rai India in Bhopal, 40% women face harassment regularly on public transport and 88% have faced harassment at least once in their life. In Bangalore, 9 out of 10 women reported to feel unsafe and feared sexual harassment in public spaces. In Mumbai, only 56% of the city was felt to be safe and 22% of the streets were found walkable and only 31% of the streets had sufficient light. The data points out that the cities and public spaces are highly male-dominated and extremely unsafe, which have severely restricted the mobility of women and her right over the public space. For the working women and those who go out of their homes regularly for different purposes, the unsafe roads are still a challenge and a cause of terror. Now moving on to the next slide. The women taxi services had emerged as a solution to the lack of safety on the roads. To provide safe traveling options to the women, especially those women who stay out of their homes till late night. Porsche was the first women-only taxi service in Asia, founded by Revati Roy in Mumbai in 2007. Porsche is an intelligent play on Porsche, a German car brand. The name signals the motive to reclaim the domain of cars from men. Veera Cabs was founded by Preeti Sharma Menon in Mumbai in 2011, and Priyadarshini taxis were started by Susiben Shah with the aim to empower women from low-income groups, besides providing safe and secure conveyance to women. Ola and Uber too started appointing women as drivers in the recent years. Hima Bindu was the first woman appointed by Ola in Hyderabad in 2017, and Shushma Midde is the first women driver appointed by Uber in Kolkata. Azad Foundations launched a Women with Heels program in Delhi, which was later expanded to other cities like Bangalore, Jaipur, Kolkata, Indore, and Ahmedabad. Now moving on to the next slide. Let's look at the nature of the driving. Let's look at the nature of the training. The training of the women drivers was not limited only to teaching them driving. It involved creating awareness of the challenges that they would face on the roads, and preparing the women drivers to face these challenges were an important part of the training program. The women were taught self-defense techniques, provided with basic knowledge of car maintenance, administering first aid, handling emergency situations like accident etiquettes, cleanliness, and Priyadarshini Cabs especially also taught them about the tourist spots in Mumbai, so that if required, they can act as tourist guides also. Azad Foundation also trained women with all these skills, but it took the training to another level by making the trainees aware of the rights of the women and the laws of the land. The motive was not only creating financial empowerment, but challenging patriarchy. So it chose driving instead of conventional occupations for women like tailoring, pickle making, papad making, nursing, or a beautician's course, as the knowledge of technology and mobility, which are fundamental to driving, are considered to be the prerogative of men. So moving on to the next slide.
Excuse me, can you please wind up in another 1 minute?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Let's see how driving helped to make a difference. I would focus briefly on the 4 women drivers. Shushma Midde from Belur, West Bengal, who took up driving as her husband's earnings, along with what she had earned from doing odd jobs, were not sufficient to meet the family expenses. Midde was supported by her husband in her decision to pursue driving. She trained with Azad Foundation, and driving has helped her to improve her economic conditions. She is the only female Uber driver in Kolkata, and she is often asked by the passengers to call her for a ride to pass on the phone to the driver, and are surprised to learn that she is the driver of the car that they had booked for their ride. Savitri and Poonam are the mother-daughter duo who trained themselves as drivers. They were supported by Dayaram, Savitri's husband, and Poonam's father, but the neighbors had ridiculed them. Ignoring the negative response, they continued driving. Now the girls from Savitri's village, Mehrauli, wants to become drivers like her, and they ask her to take them to Delhi to learn driving. Poonam finances her education with her earnings and plans to pursue higher studies to do a white-collar job in future. Coming to Sakshi, unlike the above-mentioned cases, Sakshi's was a difficult life. A victim of domestic violence, she returned to her parents' home with a little son when her husband had planned to murder her. Her family was not welcoming, and she had to move to her friend's place later. And she joined Women with Wheels program with Azad Foundation and is now a commercial driver. Though her parents don't support her decision, she found courage to tell them no, unlike in previous instances when they had repeatedly sent her back to her abusive in-laws. Sakshi is now pursuing BA honors and plans to study law in future, much against the wishes of her family. Now aware of her rights and the rights of other women, Sakshi is not scared to protest if she finds any women being harassed on the roads. She aspires to start a women's organization in future. So we see here how driving helps these women to empower themselves exercise their agency and act as agents of change. This is a very positive development as we see women coming out of their traditional roles and voicing themselves. Now, moving on to the next slide.
Please continue.
Ma'am, yeah, in 1 minute, another 1 minute is one.
As women driver isn't easy. Sushma Midde had to make numerous rounds of the government offices for clearing the driving tests and to secure a driving license. She was frustrated to the point to ask an official, if a woman can run the state, why can't a woman drive? Lack of parking spaces for poor people is a problem, as this women have to fight for parking space with their male colleagues who are often unwilling to adjust. Also, the traffic police treat them roughly and punish them with heavy fines for small mistakes while they are considerate towards the male drivers. They face abuses from the male drivers too while on the roads. Lack of public toilets is causing them serious inconvenience and affecting their health, as women, unlike the male drivers, cannot relieve them in the open. This reflects the gender unfriendly design of the city. For those who run women-only taxi services, it has become very difficult to find investors, though they are working efficiently and their services are in demand. Revati Roy, the founder of Porsche, said investors would invest 100 crores in companies that are unable to make profit yet, but not even 10 crores to the taxi services run by women. So the class bias and gender bias is at the root of the problems. Now, moving on to the next slide.
I think you should conclude now.
Yeah. This is the last slide.
Thank you.
Let's see how entry of women in the commercial driving has changed the notions of both femininity and driving. Women have emerged as a protected provider, which was traditionally associated with men. These female drivers have not only taken the charge of their own lives, but have also become breadwinners for their family, and on occasion the sole breadwinners. The women drivers act as guardians of safety for the women passengers, guarantee them a safe and secure journey, which is a new addition to the notion of the driver. Driving has also emerged as a tool for assertion of women's rights over the cities and public spaces, which is highly male dominated, as we have seen. These women drivers have not only claimed the city, as they have made it possible for them to stay outdoors for longer hours without being worried about their safety. Driving, which was just another job of men, have become a medium of empowerment for women, both financial as well as social. They can now decide for themselves, as we have seen in the case of Sakshi. Driving has also connected them with organizations which help them to solve their problems, and it has become a medium of building social capital. As these women go out on the roads daily and in their workplaces, they meet new people, face adversities, and are now more aware of their rights. They are ready to fight for their rights and also help other women in distress. So commercial driving has helped them to find a new identity, new confidence, and self-esteem. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And a very interesting paper, but sorry, we are already running, I think 2.5 hours or so late. So we had to rush you up. But Rita, I think we have to wind up now.
Yes, ma'am, just a bit observation of yours, feedback.
I'll just say a few words. First of all, I would like to thank the team members of the organizing committee for giving me an opportunity to listen to such intellectual papers, and I'm sure all of you have done a great job, and a lot of effort has gone into it. But unfortunately, because of the technological error or whatever, we were slightly late. But anyway, whatever gist that we have gathered from these papers, I think is that besides the flaws and follies, we still have to overcome all these and move on. And that is what, as women, we are going to do. We are going to move ahead with the technological advancement that is there. One thing I would like to talk about here is that Diksha said that technology remains gender blind. I think we are gender blind, not the technology. We are a contributing factor to this blindness, and it is both men and women. We should get out of this. And
Yes.
thank you, all of you. And I really liked Vijetri's and Jagriti's paper a lot, because a lot of work has gone into this was very different, driving their own way. I could never imagine she would literally take the concept of a vehicle and move on with her paper. Very nicely put, Vijayatri. Thank you so much. And Jagriti, Diksha, Himanshi, and Surekha, thank you so much for your effort. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you so much,
Thank you,
ma'am.
Sandhya ma'am.
Thank
It was
you.
nice interacting with you after a
Yes.
long time.
Yes, Jagriti. It's always
Excuse
a
me,
pleasure
ma'am.
to meet you.
Hello. Excuse me, ma'am.
Viranita, please take over.
Okay.
Hello.
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 Yeah. Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. we can-
Sorry. Yeah. Good evening, ma'am. I'm so sorry to interrupt. Actually, even I had to say on my paper, the title was in the social media. So actually, I guess because of the fault of the net or something, I was not able to join. So
Okay,
my
but
name is Ratna. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, ma'am.
we are
Ratna,
really
Ratna, I
Yes,
don't.
ma'am.
Ratna, which session were you in?
Sandhya, can I intervene? I am Jeeva
Yes,
here.
sure.
Ratna Priya, her paper is at the session B2. So next session.
Yes, ma'am.
You can wind up.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Okay.
You can still join and listen
Yeah.
to the present
Yeah.
is there.
Yeah. Thank
Okay,
you.
ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Thanks, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, Barinita?
yes, ma'am. Ma'am, she's telling she will present. She will present it now. If you give permission, she will present it now.
The paper
I
now?
think she is not having. She is not having here.
She's not having it
Was
in
she?
this session.
Oh, acha.
Okay.
Okay.
So
She's having it in the next session.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's
then
in
she
next
should go
session.
to her own
I'm
session.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll be joining this.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I understand. Okay, just to wind up, a big thank you to Sir Jasbir, Ma'am Sandhya, and other members who joined and give their valuable feedbacks. And I also echo the same thought with Ma'am Sandhya, the way Vijetri has taken the concept and Indra Nui's concept, Ma'am Jagriti's. And to Ma'am Jagriti, I want to tell, Ma'am, first of all, I was so confused how to pronounce this. Is it Cthulhucin, Thulucin? I was so attracted with that particular word, very attractive. Then I asked Sir Prasanta, sir, how to, because I'm very attracted to this. And I also mispronounced, if you notice, ma'am. I said, I pronounced that word ka, which should be silent. I said Cthulhucin, but after that, when it said Thulucin, then my thing got clear. So these types of seminar we learn from all these things. So many new words, so many new concepts, and the more we learn every day, we are learning. It's not that there should be the ultimate that we know everything. It's a learning process. We should learn from our juniors, from our seniors. So a
Banita
big
ma'am, we learn from each other actually.
yes,
I have
we do.
also learned from my peers.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. So it's nice meeting. We are just, sitting in different corners of this world, this country, and still we are knowing each other. So it's a great thing which technology is helping us to do. Thank you, all of you. Thank you. A big round of applause for all of us.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Yes. Okay.
Jasbir sir, what is next?
Can we join the first one, or are we supposed to continue here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Now,
Jasbir sir?
the second.
This link is for the second session also. So
Yeah.
others can join. Yeah.
Jasbir sir, can you tell us what is the next session?
I think I'm just confirming there is another session which has to take place, that is to be chaired by Professor Sudhir Raji. So, because we are
Sir,
beyond our
the link will be same. Sir, the link will be same, no?
That let me confirm, because that has to be confirmed from Dinesh.
I think, yeah. I think the link, Jinesh, are you here? Jinesh, are you here?
Professor Jasbir, what is the name of the theme? The session
I
you
think that
said?
is the,
Next is second A, B.
So we are in second B, is it?
We are
Yeah,
in
yeah.
second
Yeah.
B. Yes.
And
Yeah, second B is,
link will
yeah,
be same. Link will be
yeah,
same, no? Yeah.
yeah, women, technology and science media. That is the theme, is it?
Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah. So shall I
yeah,
start that? Because Professor
Yes.
Barik is the co-chairperson. He's not here with us. So then before start, I want to welcome all the presenters and who are, I mean, being with us in this the session. And since we are a little far behind, Dr. Barbara told me that for the presenters to cut short of their presenting time to be, I mean, limited to 8 minutes, not 10 minutes. So we have the session, the particular session that we are in is Women, Technology and Science and Media. So I'm the chairperson of this session, the co-chairperson, Professor Barik from Odisha, and the IT coordinator, Dinesh Augustine, and our rapporteur is Miss Diksha Bajet. I'm sorry if I mispronounce, and University of Jammu. We have altogether 5 presenters. Without wasting time, I think since we have to go for the third session, that is the valedictory ceremony, I quickly call upon Miss Aryaria Inozi. Her presentation is, the title is Women and Smart Societies, the role of female element in the smart fiction process. So you are given 8 minutes for your presentation. Thank you very much. Please, floor is over to you.
Thank you, Professor. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay,
so others can also hear.
Okay, I would like to share with you my PowerPoint presentations.
Yeah.
Okay. It's visible?
It's coming. Yes. Yes, now it's visible. Hope
Perfect.
all the other attendees can see this.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah, you can start.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Our cities and in general our social contexts are becoming increasingly smart. The process of smartification concerns every area: city, community, home, politics, individual person. In this process, the pivotal role is undoubtedly represented by the technological element. There is no smart context if it is not at the same time also technological. In the relationship between technology and smart society, a fundamental role is played by women. It has been analyzed, for example, that women are much more sensitive and responsible than men towards environmental issues. Or again, a smart society is based on the importance of the pedagogical dimension, which is also realized through the practice of play, contexts in which the feminine element becomes central. So in this paper, I try to analyze from a sociological point of view the role of women within the smart society, with the aim of highlighting the characteristic elements of women's contribution to this topic. So one of the fundamental elements of the smart society is represented by the attention to the environmental issue. Let's think, for example, of the issue of energy efficiency, which directs attention towards the construction of smart buildings that are buildings that we know cause less pollution than traditional buildings. According to some studies that investigate how environmental demands are perceived by the population, in the Italian context, for example, women show a greater concern for the issue of the environment. It would be interesting to carry out empirical research in other countries, European and non-European, to verify if this connection between women and the environment also happens elsewhere. Women in particular express greater concern about air pollution, hydrogeological instability, and other natural disasters. Men are more concerned about greenhouse effect, ozone hole, waste, deforestation. And this difference between women and men is interesting in terms of a mutual possibility of influencing one's own choices, and it is a potential that could be very useful in terms of improvement. In this sense, the role of women from a simple domestic role becomes a social role. The woman who takes care of the house and manages it in a way that is attentive to the environment is a woman who is contributing to the construction of a society more attentive to certain issues. Women are often weak in terms of economic choices, but strong in terms of private choices. Who, for example, manages the kitchen in a house? Generally, it is the woman who decides what to buy, how to cook, what to feed her family. So certain consumptions, energy, food, organic, belong precisely to the woman who manages the domestic economy, also from the point of view of the costs of certain choices. It is therefore to be hoped that women will be increasingly involved in the decision-making processes. When women are involved in a project that has to do with the environment, resource management tends to improve considerably. To be more precise, environmental protection is increased when the groups responsible for the project are made up of at least 50% of female representatives. According to a study by United Nations Women, women and children are 14 times more likely to die and suffer injuries in the event of natural disasters. So women play a key role in the management of natural resources at family and community level, and are the most affected by the environmental degradation. In communities around the world, women manage water, fuel sources and food, as well as forests and farmland. Also, according to United Nations women produce 60 to 80% of their food in developing countries, while inheritance laws and local customs often prevent them from owning or renting land and obtaining loans or insurance. In many developing countries, women work predominantly in agriculture, but only a minority of them own the land they work, and are often the first to notice the impact of climate change. So women's unequal participation in decision-making often prevents them from contributing to climate-relevant planning, policy-making, and associated implementation processes. This role becomes even more preponderant in the pedagogical field. Currently, the child becomes with increasing precocity a direct and indirect consumer. He gradually develops his own identity as a consumer. Also fundamental in this is the role of women in educating in the values related to consumption and choices. But let's see a concrete example of female innovation in smart cities. Fumiko Ayashi was mayor of Yokohama in Japan from 2009 to 2021, a long period in which a very ambitious project saw the light, the Yokohama Smart City Project. The city of Yokohama is, just a few words, the second most populated city after the capital. It is an economically active and highly urbanized area, with consequent problems of mobility and pollution. In its recent history of 150 years, Yokohama was confronted by difficulties, including the damage of earthquakes and war, explosive population growth, and the pollution that resulted from economic development. So Yokohama City, as a future city, is responsible for establishing a large city model that simultaneously solves climate change countermeasures, and economic and social issues using power of citizen and urban resource. But when a journalist asks Fumiko Yahashi, what obstacles do you think women leaders still face in delivering their agenda, including on climate change? The mayor replies, being a woman will not be an obstacle in implementing the agenda. The strength of women lies in leadership that employs empathy and acceptance. Better results are produced by men and women taking advantage of each other's strengths, coming together and producing results in tandem. So, the conclusion. Even today, it is not possible to define unequivocally what is meant by the expression smart city. Technology is undoubtedly fundamental to make a city smart, but it is not enough. Smart cities means smart people, means smart institutions. It means cities that are not only technological, but also sustainable from an environmental, economical, and social point of view. A smart city works if all innovations are able to coexist and interact in a systemic and dynamic way, but especially if the term smart works more on human intelligence that can be stimulated within a process that aims at inclusion, a key element of this new way of urban life. Women, therefore, as citizens, can play a central role in the process of smartification of society, especially in the sense of a society that is smart, as it is more inclusive, more equitable, and more sensitive to issues that otherwise would remain in the background. There's some references, and so thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much that you complete your presentation well in time. So next I would like to invite Bindu Balagopal and Chakko Jose. So I hope that one of you or two of you give the presentation. So now flow is over to you.
Thank you. This paper is titled Influences of Technoscience, Gender Interlinkages on Social and Economic Hierarchical Structures. This paper is written jointly by Dr. Bindu Balagopal, who is Associate Professor of Economics, Government Victoria College, Palakkad, Kerala, India, and myself, Dr. Chakko Jose, Faculty of Economics, St. Aloysius College, Elthurith, Thrissur. I'll to keep the time frame, will not go for a slide presentation. I'll just summarize the paper. Women historically have had little access to media, communication technologies, and the opportunities to build communities and share experiences with other women. Existing power relations in society delineate the enjoyment of benefits from digital technologies. Gender stereotyping and the role of a homemaker have not allowed women much time or space for social bonding. Growth objectives, targets, and strategic actions is designed and formulated by political leadership and administration, which has built-in middle-class gender bias. Improving women's access to technology has the potential to spur their economic advancement and stimulate broader economic growth. But technology has been underused in unlocking women's economic opportunities. Specific actions may be required to remove the identified gender bias. Commitment at the top political and administrative level is necessary for integration of gender dimensions into the policy cycle. It is widely recognized that digital revolution can help to bridge the gender divide. Developments in information and communication technology can empower women by promoting basic literacy and education, providing employment opportunities, access to financial services such as banking, and markets by facilitating their health and safety. The methodology followed in this paper is that the paper analyzes two time periods of technological change and discusses the impact of technology on women on both economic and social fronts. The period of two periods, one period is the period of industrial revolution and the other period is the period of digital revolution. So, the period of industrial revolution and the period of digital revolution is taken for analyzing the changing role of women. In the Indian context, the gender divide, as projected in the Gender Development Index or Gender Empowerment Measure, is abysmal, with a gender gap exceeded by only by some Arab countries. India's social mindset is a curious mix of social conditioning, sociological beliefs, patriarchal values, and ambivalent legal system. It is feudal and patriarchal, and women belonging to all strata in society are victims of stereotyping and gender insensitivity. This mindset is more overt in the countryside, where women are considered as a liability within inverted commas. This fixed expression in plummeting sex ratio and the missing women. While India has 36% female participation in overall labor ratio, for professional and technical workers, the figure is only 21%. Uh, this paper discusses two periods. One is the Industrial Revolution. So the first half of the 19th century was a time of great change. Industrialization brought new opportunities for employment, changing ideas of work and economic cycles of booms and bust. During this period, women's role changed dramatically. Industrialization redefined the role of women in the home, at the same time opening new opportunities for them in the industrial wage as industrial wage earners. In the pre-industrialized world, the household was the center of production. Most families lived on a farm where everyone worked to produce goods in order to survive. Within this context, the status of men and women was relatively equal. Men were the heads of the households, but the role of women as caretakers and producers of goods such as food and clothing was equally important. With the first stage of industrialization, these patterns changed. Increasingly, men began working outside the home. Rather than selling goods they had produced, these workers sold their time to a factory owner who, in turn, sold the mass produced goods. Men dominated this new realm of work. They made money, not goods, to provide for the family. The material success, how much money one could make, and what they could buy with it became the measure of a person's worth. Now, when we come to the second one, that is digital revolution marked the beginning of the information age. It implicitly refers to the sweeping changes brought about by the digital computing and communication technology during the latter half of the 20th century. Central to this revolution is the mass production and widespread use of digital logistic circuits. So these are the two periods that are being compared. So I come to the conclusion of this paper. Technology per se is gender neutral in the sense that there is nothing in the changes as such which prevents women in participating and enjoying the fruits of change. Technological exclusion is the result of inherent disadvantages like poverty, and the women belonging to the disadvantaged groups definitely are excluded. Gender divide is not so easy to bridge since it is entrained by the value system. Technological revolution like industrial revolution and digital revolution have helped to bridge the divide to some extent, but there is the glass ceiling which women find difficult to pierce. This invisible barrier continues to exist even though there are no explicit obstacles keeping minorities from acquiring advanced job positions. There are no advertisements that typically says no minorities hired at this establishment, but they do lie beneath the surface. The glass ceiling is distinguished from the formal barriers to advancements such as education or experience requirements. But the presence of this barrier prevents large number of women and ethnic minorities from obtaining and securing the most powerful, prestigious, and highest grossing jobs in the workforce. The idea that technological revolution can succeed in bringing women to society's mainstream is just an illusion. Women continue to remain in the periphery. Technology cannot make music. Technology cannot change hearts. There are limits to which technology can go, and attitudinal change is imperative. Only a change in gender perspective will help women in crossing the gender barrier. Thank you.
I would like to introduce you all to our next participant, Liliosa Azara and Rafaela Leproni. And their paper is titled as Women Must Not Be Left Behind, the UNESCO Path Towards Women's Empowerment. Is it so? And so I'll leave the stage for you.
Thank you very much. And I am trying to share my screen so that I can share my presentation with you. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you
Yeah,
very
it's
much.
visible.
Thank you very much. And I'm here also on behalf of my colleague, Liliosa Zara. We both work for Roma Tre University. And today I would like to just hint at the progress that UNESCO made towards women's empowerment in the official documents it provided. So discussing the factors and the prejudice that have contaminated education policies and programs and determined women's underrepresentation in some strategic fields of the so-called Industrial Revolution. And one of the main concepts I will refer to is the idea of functional education, which is an essential element in the development of our economic and social priorities. And it is fundamentally literacy instruction, which must enable all people, especially those who are left behind by whatever the course of events may be, to become socially and economically integrated into this sort of new world order we're facing. And the international community has made a lot of efforts in defining and implementing the functional education to allow women to access the necessary knowledge and competencies to, on the one hand, stimulate the socioeconomic development worldwide, but on the other hand, also become protagonists of the transition to the digital era. So education and training in time have become the privileged field for international confrontation on gender equality. This was due to a commitment to grant equal education and training opportunity as intrinsic right to women, but also in the face of a need for a substantial approach centered on individual capacities to access rights, resources, services, and technologies. And this led to a new definition of the concept of capabilities approach. The UNESCO poses a sort of case study in this respect because it aimed at abolishing gender discrimination in accessing education in its different grades and fields. So the basic idea was that education was the key factor to eliminate analphabetism and illiteracy, and literacy was the mean for empowerment. So this was the way they put functional education into practice through professional training, which meant understanding which was and how to develop the necessary knowledge and competencies to trigger and foster socioeconomic development. And on the other hand, UNESCO had an intense activity and tried to support to highly illiterate countries, providing research, technical assistance, and inventing experimental projects in cooperation with the United Nations Procurement Division and different ONGs, though the primary action responsibility depend on local governments. So, which has been the commitment of the international community in the colonial and post-colonial era? It started back in 1946 with the Commission on the Status of Women, which was actually wished for and promoted by Eleanor Roosevelt. This commission wished to sustain equal access for women to all grades and modes of education within a wider and more complex frame, which was that of promoting gender equality and women's empowerment. In the first session of the Commission, it was declared that one of the guiding principles informing the action of the whole Commission was to raise the status of women, irrespective of nationality, race, language, or religion, to equality with men in all fields of human enterprise, and to eliminate all discrimination against women in the provisions of statutory law, legal maxim rules, or interpretation of customary law. And one of the main aspects that it was important to focus on was the way that these concepts were expressed, the language that was used to express them. And that was one of the first issues that the Commission contributed to, because at the beginning, it fought the resistances of the Commission on what was going to be the human rights, on gender-respectful normative grammar, in order to erase disparities. Because the first proposal for the Commission and for all the declarations which followed were to call them the Commission on the Right of Men, while the Commission on the Status of Women protested that the word man was ambiguous because it designated at the same time the category of human beings and the specific of male beings. So they introduced the expression of human rights to encompass all human individuals. And they wanted to show that the human rights concern people which are not only abstract equal individuals in front of the law, but are subjects with specific personal identities, which start with the fundamental identity of gender. And in further qualifications, especially in actuation and safeguard of the general category of human rights, they specifically aimed to the rights of women, which full realization implies adopting a canon of social justice, which is unluckily still often not fully achieved. So how do human rights come alive? Human rights come alive in the 2030 Agenda and in its development goals, which state that women must not be left behind. Women must be granted equal access to technology education, and they must be enabled to compete with men for future professions through policies, strategies, programs aiming to reduce and delete the digital divide adopted by national governments. One of the first steps in this respect was the Conference on Public Education in Geneva 1952, which promoted the access of women to all levels of education, wished to extend compulsory education to both sexes, and grant women equal opportunities of education paths in a lifelong learning perspective. Though the same recommendation which promoted all these values also envisaged the opportunity to grant and fulfill this education, only taking into account differences in the psychophysiological development between the sexes. So the problem was on equality and equity, and the following UN Assembly resolutions induced UNESCO to a deeper reflection on the role of women, which was intrinsically relevant to the process of development, and substantially to redefine equality, transcending the formal acknowledgement of women's rights. And in 1970, UNESCO International Year of Education, the Learning to Be report generated a heated debate on this concept because it forced UNESCO to new strategic choices of lifelong learning and lifelong education to avoid marginalization of wide parts of a population of the learning society. And in the following decades, there were different declarations, but the priority was given to overcoming women's condition of inferiority, granting them effective exercise of their rights, starting from access to education, especially in those fields who were up to that moment traditionally confined to men's educations. So fighting this stereotype. There were a lot of other outcomes and surveys to monitor the progress of this idea. And in the 80s, higher attention to this equality experimented by women in trying to access to work, career, and roles marked one of the darkest periods of UNESCO history. But in the following decade, starting with the International Year of Literacy and on the following World Conference, functional literacy restarted being used as the basis for cognitive tools, though varying from country to country, in order to globalize the access to and promoting equity. And the motto was education for all. So in the next year's commission, a new strategy was defined, and I'm jumping and skipping to conclusion, because they accepted the fact that they needed as a strategic goal to wider define literacy and enrich the concept by the acquisition of scientific and technical competencies to elevate women's access to professional education, with programs including but not limited to science, maths, environment sciences, technology, information technology, high tech, and company management. Now, our actual agenda represents the theoretical and strategic global plan for the progress of sustainable development. No more circumscribed to economic dimension, extended to environment and society, and striving towards sustainability and universality. So, to conclude, only becoming aware of the intimate interconnection between inequality, marginality and exclusion, and poverty, human rights, gender equality, and women empowerment can be fulfilled, responding to the imperative of an inclusive development. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. Now I would like to invite Professor Dr. Manish Prasad. He is presenting the paper and title of Is Translation Technology a New Force / Hope for Women Empowerment? Understanding the dynamics of translation technology through the perspectives of female translators. Now over to you. Is the presenter with us? Manish Prasad. Okay, so then I would like to move to the next presenter. That is Ratna Priya. Her presentation is Social Media a Tool for Women Empowerment? Some Facts and Realities. Yes, the floor is for yours.
Thank you, ma'am. And I'm really sorry for interrupting earlier.
No, it's all right.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ratna Priya, and I'm a student of Masters in English. And here I'm going to present my paper on women in technology. And the title of my paper is Social Media a Tool for Women Empowerment? Some Facts and Realities. So social media has turned on to be a part of culture and society. It has been a platform for the current generations to raise their voices and noises. Globalization and the powers of internet have assisted people in such a way that they are inclined towards social media platforms. Social media interactions are becoming increasingly important as technology is adapting included a more human-friendly environment, including a social-based operating systems and communication-oriented software applications. Social media has proved to be a powerful vehicle for bringing women's rights issues to the attention of a wider public, and the explosion of social media by women of new technologies represents important opportunities to bring gender equality and women's rights issues to the forefront of both policy making and media attention. Social media is a part of culture and society. It is widely accepted that is social media are transmitters of culture and engines behind globalizing culture. So social media play a vital role for empowering women. Social media could enhance women's participation in economy and political life and allows them to increase their self-expression and promote social changes. And this is a strong belief that has risen up in the society. This paper is to enhance and forecast social media potential for women's empowerment and to show how their access to technology is increasing women's representations in public life and media. I want to quote here a quote by Swami Vivekananda. Quote, there is no chance of the welfare of the world unless the condition of women is improved. It is not possible for a bird to fly on one, unquote. Lastly, I want to conclude by saying that education is also one of the prime needs of women towards its development and empowerment in the society. With education, social media can act as a platform or bridge to surpass the barriers of essential communications and empowering women. Women who are being deprived of basic human rights and life chances are becoming empowered due to social media. They can reach various helplines through the initiative of alternative media groups and members and connect with people. The various challenges posed by the new era have forced us to provide a concrete and development aspect alternatives instead of empowerment of women through the possible available media. We need more actions-oriented programs and policies which inculcate in understanding the various prospects of media, keeping into consideration women's empowerment, a must need of the society. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Since the fourth presenter did not turn up, now I would like to open the forum for the discussion until Professor Barbara asks us to complete this our session and to join the main session for the valedictory ceremony, rather the session 3, so we can have a very good discussion on the papers which have been presented by the presenters, or any other comments under this our particular theme, that is women, technology, science and media. Yes, now floor is over to all the participants of this session. Any question? I want to know that whether you all are with me in the sense that in this session, if there is no question, I would like to ask a question from the the third presenter, Professor Liliosa, who is, representing Roma Tre University and presenting the paper on Women Must Not Be Left Behind, the UNESCO Path Towards Women's Empowerment. Yes, thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. Since I am also coming from Public and International Law Department, more towards the human rights, I just want to know about what are the main international instruments ratified by the Italian government so far in relation to protect the women's rights.
Okay, so thank you very much. This is a very interesting question because, our system depends not only from our Italian government, but also to the European policies. So we have a double folded perspective in that. So that we have agreed in accepting, for example, here we have the Gender Action Plan, and the UNESCO Priority Gender Equality Action Plans. Specifically, Italy adhered to the European Union Gender Action Plan, and we had 3 gaps in this plan, which were subsequent to the plan promoted by the UN. And we started in 2010, and the current one started last year and will go on up to 2025. And unluckily, the goals that were foreseen were only partially fulfilled. But the point is that though the report presents some problems, one of the main directions we're going to undertake is to adopt the 2030 agenda as to every sustainable goal development, so that education, it has become a priority, and we are putting into action many different strategies to include into education the widest population possible. And we have started fighting the digital divide by trying to implement the digital competencies for our teachers and pupils at all school levels. And we are trying to do that keeping in mind that every learner presents different individual characteristics, which are not only gender, but the way that people learn, the way that people adapt their learning to their previous background, and the way they adapt their own system of values and conceptions to the culture which they inhabit. So the main goal is a sustainable, participated, and conscious citizenship, which includes especially women, because they are privileged interlocutors in terms of diffusion, spreading, and building learning and education.
Thank you very much, Professor Lily.
Liviosa is actually my colleague. My name is Raffaella, and
sorry, Raffaella.
No,
yes.
never mind. And
Okay,
I
so
wish
sorry.
to send her greetings to you all, and she couldn't connect because of one personal issue which came unforeseen, and she sends her greetings to everybody, and thank you for this great opportunity for discussing these themes together.
Yeah, thank you for your participation also. Any questions or comments from the audience? Okay. I think that it is the question and answer session between the chairperson and the presenters only. Right. My next the question goes to the second paper. I don't know who has presented, I can't remember. Professor Bindu Balagopal and Professor Jose presented. I just want to, am I audible to you, Professor Jose? Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
We can.
All right. I don't know whether he is with us. So my question is to him, that is, he wanted to correctly pointed out during the Industrial Revolution, how that, female access to the economic development, and secondly, the digital era. I want to ask a question from him. What is the percentage of women participation and women's literacy in the computer literacy in India, in the different the states, as well as if you take that generally. Okay, I hope that sometimes maybe the technical the issues some of you might not have really participate in. However, rather than asking questions, I thought that to wind up. Prior to that, I just want to comment on the papers and including my the comments. So we had altogether four the papers, wonderful papers presented by the academics, focusing the different aspects. One is women and environment. The other one, women and economic development. The third, the two presenters, but representing only one presenter, spoke about the women and especially the international the instruments and how that access to education. The last one, social media and women empowerment. So I would like to, summarize all the aspects, including our main theme, that is women, technology, science, and media. So I would like to take 1 or 2 minutes to wind up and summarize stating some of the comments from my end as the chairperson of this session. Now we are talking about the modern technology. So how much we are dependent to the technology and the energy and all. Sri Lanka is now undergoing a big crisis because of that, the economic crisis. But because of that reason, but the ultimate result is now we don't have power. Actually, I am now participating in this conference, right? Without any power, but get good. I charged my laptop fully charged, and with the dongle, I am, participating in this conference. That may be one of the reasons I am unable to, open my camera. So my point here is to say that when it comes to the technology, uh, I believe that there is no bar to anyone to access to technology, because even if you get the international instruments as well as all the laws and regulations, there is no such bar. As very correctly the keynote speaker said, that the bars actually come from maybe the attitudes as well as the social strata and the economic empowerment. So I think we each and everyone, as the academics, we have the experience that how we struggle when we had the pandemic situation to continue our the university academic activities and all the other activities during the pandemic period. Everyone has a lot of different experiences, how our less knowledge in technology, how it really affect on the quality of teaching as well as even our research work, especially the first the wave of the pandemic. So later on, everyone, including all the countries in many, all of us, we learned and how to work on that. Now somehow we manage. So this is, as a result, we are also, whatever the technological, the energy, whatever the issues that we have, we are managed to I mean, uh, uh, do our work. So that is what we call adaptation, as Charles Darwin said, as the survival of fittest. So I really want to make one more than the comment, one idea relating to this, taking the negative effect of the technology, especially taking the social media in Sri Lankan situation, because there is no any paper presented by Sri Lanka, as well as there is no paper considered the legal aspect. Therefore, I thought that being as a lawyer, to share some of the thoughts with you relating to this women, technology, science, and media. So as far as the media is concerned, I think that more than the other countries, the economically developed countries, Sri Lanka and some of the South Asian region countries, we have the issue that the way that media is used, especially when it comes to communicate and put the news in social media, print media, electronic media about the crimes and all. So there are sometimes even that offenses against women, especially sexual offenses, though that we have the rules and regulations, still the media behave differently. Therefore, I think that many South Asian region, we want to have to develop a kind of media policy when it comes to the special kind of the incidents take place against women. So then another aspect that is also negative aspect, using the social media by small children. I think I am one of the witnesses of many the issues faced by the small girl children, especially who are below 18-year-old. Because they did not know how to use the social media for their education and the personal development and all. Because of their teenage and the inquisitive age, they have some kind of the temptation to do some of the let's say that being as an adult unacceptable things. Like therefore during this pandemic situation, there were lots of issues happening in Sri Lanka in relation to child's protection. There are lots of cases came to the Child Protection Bureau. Using this modern technology, the children were being abused. Then there were so many the cases like that. So therefore, Sri Lanka, the issue is our law is not that much strong to fix such people. So the women and as far as women and environment is concerned, though Sri Lanka also be a member country to many the environmental the instruments. However, the women participation in protection of environment, other than the protection of environment, there is no that much of involvement in women in relation to environmental activities. So that is what the Sri Lanka's standpoint is. When it comes to the education, Sri Lanka now using almost all, even the rural areas, since this country is a very small country, the government provided all the relevant the apparatus and all the things to conduct the education in online. Therefore, the computer literacy level is almost 100% even among the young generation. And they are up to now, all the universities as well as many schools, they conduct their the studies online, and access to online is more than 90%. Other than that, some of the servers issues and the interruptions, other than that the entire system smoothly functions. I think that it is because of that, the size of the country and the population of the country. And when it comes to using that the modern technology and the women, the participation at the tertiary education, Sri Lanka is, I think, that has a very high standards. That is the more than 60% of women population, the university population, women consist of more than 60%. This is what I have to comment on that. Yes, so these are the things I want to share with you in relation to technology, science and media, and how it really, support to uplift the life of women, as well as how it negatively affect on women's life. So having said that, if there is any other question, if the audience wants to ask from any of the presenter, yes, I can allow them to ask yes, let's say that maximum 5 questions. Then thereafter we can wind up our session and can join the main session for the valedictory ceremony. Yes.
Jiva ma'am, good evening.
Good
Jagriti
evening,
here.
Jagriti. Yes.
I'm sorry that I missed a portion of the presentations because I was cooking dinner and serving it to my family. So I'm really sorry that I have no questions for the presenters, but I listened to your enriching information right now. And one problem that we face on the cyber, media is related to women is cyber stalking, then pornography, and sometimes the photographs that the girls they take and put on the social media, particularly Facebook and other social platforms, they're morphed by some antisocial elements, and then they blackmail these young women. So what is the take in Sri Lanka? Do you have laws? Like, we are still working on a lot of cyber crimes and cyber laws. And since I come from the police university, and you are also from law and criminology, so we know that cyber crimes against women are escalating. Child pornography is also there. So what is your take on this issue, and how does Sri Lanka deal with these issues through their policies? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Jagriti, for the wonderful question. It is, this is one of the burning issue in Sri Lanka. Since you asked that, what is the stand in relation to this type of let's say that, the criminal offenses, the pornography as well as cyber stalking and all. Yes, we do have law. We call that, simply maybe like the other countries, it is computer crimes. We have the Computer Crimes Act, somewhere more than 1 decade, we enacted this particular, the act. But the issue is when it comes to that, conducting the investigation. I hope that being a person who is, in the police, the university, though you're doing literature, the issue is the investigation. Sometimes, the police officers are not that, they know about this technology, how to detect the person and how to arrest the person, and more to that, preserve the information that they have collected. So when it comes to, trial, it takes a long time. Sri Lanka, another problem is laws delay. So because of that reason, when the trial, comes in the court, so it is very difficult to prove. So, but I want to say you very direct answer to your question. Yes, the stand is we have laws. They are to some extent, it say that, the law per se, literally it's all right. But the only thing is when it comes to implementation, Jagriti, little bit we have the problem, because the law and the implementation, there is a gap. So then we should come with some policies as well as some mechanisms to overcome that. I think that is common to India as well. Many, South Asian countries, we have the same issue. We have the laws, but when it comes to implementation, it's problem. Investigation, arrest the person, searching as well as processing until the trial is over. These are some of the issues, and people are coming with some sort of policies how to, overcome those issues. This is the answer. I don't know whether you satisfy with that.
No, it's
That is the
absolutely
situation in Sri Lanka.
yes, Jiva ma'am. We also have the same situations.
And one other thing, Jagriti, we are a member country to Budapest Convention, but
Yes.
it is, unfortunately, Budapest Convention does not have the teeth to, do whatever the necessary thing. Actually, I got the opportunity to, suggest some of the recommendations to go for the crime treaty for the like Rome Statute, even for this, the cyber crimes, because Budapest Convention is not enough to control this the what is happening in where all over the countries, though they are member countries to Budapest Convention.
Right.
Yes, Jagriti.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. Thank you so much, because we face the same problem, and my university is trying to educate the police officers in this field through a couple of diplomas and degrees in cyber crimes. And we recently felicitated some cyber warriors in Jaipur. Last week I was there to witness that event. And it was nice, like how the police people are now catching up with, cyber knowledge to apprehend the criminals of cybercrime, ma'am.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jagriti. Professor Jasbir, any question? Or if not, we can wind up our session, giving a big flow to the, all the presenters and the wonderful participation of all the attendees. What you suggest by the audience, I need your suggestion. All right, so since we don't have questions, yeah. Okay, thank you, Rafaela. So thank you very much for each and every presenter submitting papers, and you took a lot of efforts and do research to submit the paper and present the paper at this conference. And I want to specially thank everyone, because everybody knows that we are under pandemic situation and it is not easy to do the research because we are all fighting to survive. So while fighting to survive, I really appreciate and salute your efforts. Everyone, session B2 presented the paper. Since the very beginning of this conference, it is said that all are given the opportunity to submit your full paper for the book or whatever the publication. This is what we really required. Therefore, I must thank Anupama and Professor Barbara and the organizers of the Holy Cross College and our World Center for Women's Studies, and all the presenters as well as the participants who participated session 2B under the title of Women, Technology and Science and Media. So yes, we should give a big cheer for all the presenters, right, for their wonderful presentations as well as their effort. Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. And I think now we all can join the other one, maybe session A or something, that is for the valedictory ceremony. We have only two links. Now we are in the second link. We all can now join to the first link. So then I will now leave.
Madam, just information.
Yeah.
Like in the valedictory session, should we join with the first one or we should continue with the same one?
To my understanding, we have to go for link 1. Session,
Okay.
Inauguration, valedictory, as well as the other, session A, they are under the first link.
Okay, that is the welcome one. Okay,
yeah.
no?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, then. Right. I hope everyone knows that how to, link to the first one. It is similar to vice versa. What we have done was, we were given the new link to, join. So what we can do is we can leave from this one and we can again we can join the link 1. So once again, thank you very much, and yes, we'll now join to session 1. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Policy making